Good everyone. I hope you guys have an amazing day. So what I'm going to do today, I will be talking more about the scope three. So if you remember, I might have touched about scope three in one of the episode when I discussed about different kind of emissions, right? And also the carbon footprint. So this 2 to 3 episode will focus more about in-depth analysis of scope three. It's important that excuse me, you guys should know what scope three is about. Now, when you talk about scope three emission, right? There are two categories of scope three emissions which should be primarily looking at emission based on the stuff you buy and purchase, the emission based on the stuff you use, right? So, in a nutshell, these are called upstream or downstream emissions. So, if you buy or acquire goods, right, that's usually come under upstream. But if you are going to use and distribute, right, then it's going to come under downstream. So, we're going to look at a few examples that just to make it clear for you guys. So, when you look at upstream, it's like you buy stuff, right? The capital goods, fuel, upstream transportation and distribution, waste generated in operation, business travel, employee commuting, upstream leased asset, downstream transportation, processing of solid product, use of solid products, franchise and investment. I tell you what, something interesting. I tell you, right now, if your company, okay, they're very serious about net zero, right? Just tell them, right? If they force you to come back to work, you are contributing to the scope three upstream emission. So what that means is that employee commuting, right? This one do contribute to the climate change. So which is not really good for the climate. So if your company is talking about bringing people back to work and they're just doing blah blah, we support climate change, they don't, because they're just BSing. They're just doing a BS, right? Because if a company is really committed to the climate change, they will know what Scope 3 is about, what Scope 1 is about, what Scope 2 is about, right? And their main target should be to mitigate climate change, not to contribute towards it. So the commute is one of the stuff. Okay, so just give you an argument. I don't know. I mean, this argument will work depending upon uh, the jurisdiction you are, the country laws, right? At least in New Zealand, this sort of argument works because New Zealand is very serious about pursuing the net zero goal by 2050. I heard that what's the name of the British Prime Minister? I often forgets his name. So whatever, I will say British PM, right? He wants to go net zero by 2050, right? So there you go. In England, you have a valid argument as well, right, for the commute. So most of the businesses may not agree with the net zero, but excuse me, after a certain time, they won't have a choice. They have to comply, right? Because if a nation implements a rule, businesses have to comply. And that's what I often tell, right? Carbon tax is coming, right? People like it or not like it. In few years' time, most of the countries will implement carbon tax, right? Singapore has done that. South Korea has done that. Sweden has implemented in 1991. Denmark has done that in 1991. Indonesia has done that as well. I think South Korea has done that as well. China, I'm not sure. China, I think, it has done it or is going to do it. I can't remember. India, I'm not 100% sure because the thing with India is that, right, the things get implemented there, but they give a very different spin to it. They give the very different name to it, right? They won't probably call it as a carbon tax. They might have some fancy Sanskrit word they're going to use it there, right? Because if you're going to say carbon tax, it won't appeal to Indian people. So they have to use a term which the people like there, right? So the government is very clever. They will come up with something, but the essence is the same. Carbon tax is coming, right? Some countries might delay it. Some countries might, say, hey, we don't want to do it. But if the World Economic Forum is pushing for it, there's nothing you can do about it. So, but hey, the positive side is it's gonna go. It's gonna affect all in a positive way, right? The development, the amount, the tax, what they collect, right? They can be used in your research and development, Recycling. You can also tax recycling means fueling back the money into the economy, building smart cities. A lot of things you can do, right? So yeah. Anyway, sorry, digress. Okay, now we talk about scope three emission, right? The scope three emission could be your your business travel, right? You're taking a flight, say for instance, you wanted to commute from, say, Palmerston North in New Zealand to say Christchurch, right? That's a business travel, right? That contributes to scope three emissions. Transportation and distribution, right? Your supply chain is one of the scope three emission contributor. Purchase goods and service could be another because you buy raw material. And the capital goods, right? It's like buildings, vehicles, machinery, kind of stuff you buy, right, to run your business. Um, and let's say if you're a textile industry, right, you will generate waste. Or if you're a meat processing industry, there will be a waste, right? These waste goes to the landfill and then cause emissions. So the waste generated in operation is one of it. End of life treatment of the solid products like your generators and cooling stuff, right? So when you talk about scope three record in net zero cloud, right? So you can uh, use energy use type, applicable emission factors, and carbon footprint type. So as you can see from this table, so if you're looking at scope 3 emission source, and we're looking at air travel energy use, ground travel energy use, rental car energy use, hotel stay energy use, freight hauling energy use, and other stuff, right? So this is just a simple stuff. And then we have all this kind of data types, which usually responsible for the data modeling, which is usually responsible for giving an idea about how the stuff gets stored in that zero cloud, right? We have scope three carbon footprint, which is pretty much which contains information about the emission source and emission source of different types, like it contains um, for instance, air travel energy use, right? That's part of it. They use air travel emission factor to calculate the value. The same goes with ground travel, then rental car, uh, hotel stay, right? Then we have procurement based. I don't want to talk much about it because just procurement means in simple, it's all to do with the value chain, right? Value chain based emission are related to procurement. Then you have the waste treatment, right? Like I said, right, if you're a company like a meat processing plant, you obviously will have the waste, right? And also you have the waste from your leftover old equipments like cooler, refrigerators. So, um, so processing of this do cause uh, some kind of greenhouse gas problem. Um, so you need to measure that as well, right? If you wanted to mitigate your carbon change, sorry, the climate change. So you need to record this somewhere. And so I briefly touched about the waste management, right? When we're looking at the waste management, so that aspect will play a role in this case, right? So yeah, that's in a nutshell, right? Scope three is important, right? The reason why I do appreciate that this is just a theory, right? But theory is important, right? Because most of the people they don't understand the terminology, right? You go and ask to someone, hey, do you have a problem with the climate change? They will say, yeah, maybe not, maybe yes. But do you know what scope one is? Most of the people have no clue what scope one is about, or scope two is about, or scope three is about, or the kinds of emissions we have, right? And what's an upstream, what's a downstream. A lot of terminologies people don't know, but they're and everyone claims to be an expert, right? If you want to be an expert, you need to talk the language, the right language, right? Not a jargon, right? So in a climate world, we have separate language, right? Like you have Apex to code for a server stuff in Salesforce. In a climate change world, we have certain codes, we have certain words. You need to use the right terms so that people who is involved in climate change can understand that, right? So that's why you need to appreciate the fact that things may not be obvious at the start, but once you get into more details, you'll learn more stuff. So that's why, my main aim is to teach you guys about the fundamentals. Then you can go and implement net zero and to showcase the capabilities of net zero to your customer. So that's pretty much what I wanted to cover in this episode. Hope you guys have an amazing Wednesday. Adios.